When it came to women, Freud wasn't trying to flatter them. He wasn't trying to empower them with nice words. He wasn't even trying to make men feel comfortable. Instead, Freud pointed to a raw truth about female desire, the truth that even today makes people uncomfortable. And this is the truth that men continue to overlook. You see, most men believe desire is logical. They think that if they work hard, provide stability and show affection, women will naturally be drawn to them. But Freud saw something else entirely. He saw that female desire was not built on logic, not built on comfort, and not built on predictable patterns. It was rooted in the unconscious, in that dark, hidden part of the psyche where social rules break down and primal instincts take over. In this video, we're going to unpack Freud's most controversial insight into female desire, the one men constantly ignore. We'll look at how this insight explains the mysteries of attraction, the paradoxes of female psychology, and why women sometimes desire what they themselves can't explain. By the end, you'll not only see Freud in a new light, you'll see women in a way you've never seen them before. So let's begin with the first part, why Freud believed female desire was never really about what it appeared to be. Part 1, the hidden layers of female desire. Freud's first major challenge to society's understanding of women was this. He said that women themselves often don't know what they desire. Think about that for a moment. Men are used to asking, what do women want? And society gives endless answers. Women want security, women want love, women want a family, women want a strong partner. But Freud broke through all of these surface explanations. He said that desire, especially female desire, does not arise from conscious choice. Instead, it bubbles up from the unconscious. This means that when a woman says she wants one thing, she might genuinely believe it, but her unconscious could be pulling her towards something entirely different. This is why, Freud argued, women sometimes fall for men who make no sense to them. It's why they might choose danger over safety, excitement over comfort, or passion over stability. Because underneath the polite words, underneath the socially accepted roles, the unconscious is whispering something much stronger. Freud's insight here is deeply uncomfortable for men because it destroys the logic they want to believe in. Men want to think, if I do X, I'll get Y. If I'm loyal, responsible, hardworking, she will reward me with her love and desire. But female desire, Freud said, doesn't operate like a simple equation. It is shaped by hidden longings, by unresolved conflicts, by childhood experiences, and by deep archetypal forces. It can be unpredictable, contradictory, and even self-destructive. Now here's where it gets truly controversial. Freud didn't say this to insult women. He wasn't mocking them or claiming they were irrational in a shallow sense. Instead, he was saying something far more radical. That the unconscious rules all of us, but women, because of the way society shaped their roles, had to bury their desires deeper than men. And this meant that their unconscious desires often surfaced in more mysterious ways. What men overlook is this. When you try to appeal to a woman only through logic, by explaining why you'd be a good partner, why she should choose you, why your love makes sense, you're speaking to her conscious mind. But her desire isn't being generated there. Her desire is born in the unconscious, and the unconscious doesn't care about your logic. The unconscious cares about symbols, about instincts, about emotions too deep to put into words. This explains why so many men feel confused when they've done everything right, yet she still doesn't feel that spark. They followed the rules, they provided, they loved, they sacrificed, and yet her unconscious was never touched. Part 2, the eternal enigma. Freud saw in women. Freud famously said, "The great question that has never been answered, and which I have not yet been able to answer, despite my 30 years of research into the feminine soul, is what does a woman want?" On the surface, this sounds like a confession of ignorance, but if you look deeper, it was not ignorance, it was revelation. Freud was not saying women are impossible to understand. He was saying that their desire itself is structured as an enigma. To Freud, female desire is not a straight line. It's not a simple hunger that can be satisfied with one solution. It is layered, paradoxical, and filled with tensions. Women may consciously desire one thing, unconsciously crave its opposite, and be drawn to men who embody both at once. For example, a woman might say she wants stability, but find herself irresistibly drawn to instability. She might want safety but be consumed by passion for danger. She might value loyalty, yet feel a thrill when confronted with forbidden temptation. This paradox doesn't make her dishonest, it makes her human. Freud argued that women's desire, more than men's, reflects the contradictions of the unconscious. And here's the painful truth: men constantly overlook this. They look for certainty. They want the formula. They want to decode female desire as if it were a problem with one answer. But Freud revealed there is no single answer, because desire is built on tension, not resolution. This is why many men feel powerless in relationships. They try to resolve her contradictions, to give her clarity, to make her choose once and for all. But what Freud uncovered is that these contradictions are the very fuel of desire. Remove the tension and you remove the fire. Which means that when a man makes himself too predictable, too stable, too resolved, he unknowingly kills the very spark that could have kept her drawn to him. Freud's controversial claim, then, was not that women are mysterious in a shallow sense. It was that their unconscious desire is structured in a way that men will always find paradoxical. And the tragedy is that men seeking certainty overlook this paradox. They demand an answer to the question, what do women want? When the very essence of desire is that it cannot be pinned down to one thing. This is why Freud called women an enigma, not because they were unknowable, but because their desire reflected the deeper, darker truth of the unconscious itself, that we are not rational masters of our passions, but servants to forces within us that we barely understand. Part 3. Female desire as the language of the unconscious. Freud believed that the unconscious doesn't speak in rational sentences. It speaks in symbols, in slips of the tongue, in dreams, and in irrational choices. And when it comes to female desire, this symbolic language becomes even more pronounced. A woman may not be able to explain why she feels attraction to a certain man, but her unconscious is writing a script that her conscious mind cannot fully read. Think about dreams. Dreams don't give us direct truths. They wrap meaning inside metaphors, disguises, and strange contradictions. Freud argued that desire works in the same way. When a woman feels attraction, it isn't always because of who the man is on paper. It is because, at a symbolic level, he embodies something her unconscious associates with power, survival, or the fulfillment of a hidden longing. This is why Freud said that women might unconsciously desire men who trigger unresolved dynamics from childhood. It might be the way he carries authority, which unconsciously links to her relationship with her father. It might be the way he shows rebellion, which unconsciously reminds her of freedom she was denied. It might be the way he radiates danger, which touches the forbidden impulses society told her to suppress. Men often overlook this because they want to believe attraction is direct. They want to believe, she likes me because I'm attractive or successful or kind. But Freud would say, those are just surface rationalizations. Beneath them, her unconscious is associating you with a symbol. Here is the controversial truth Freud hinted at. Desire is not about the object itself, but about what the object represents. In other words, she does not simply desire you. She desires what her unconscious has turned you into. You are the symbol of her unresolved conflicts, her buried fantasies, her forbidden impulses. This is why women sometimes remain obsessed with men who seem objectively unworthy. They know consciously that the man is destructive, unreliable, or even dangerous. Yet the unconscious has encoded him as the answer to something hidden. And that unconscious coding is stronger than conscious reasoning. Freud would argue she doesn't want him. She wants what he symbolizes. Part 4. Repression, the dark engine of female desire. One of Freud's most controversial ideas was that repression fuels desire. The unconscious, he said, is like a vault where forbidden impulses are locked away. But the more tightly they are locked, the more pressure builds inside. And when that vault leaks, it doesn't leak rationally. It leaks explosively, unpredictably, and often through attraction. In the context of female psychology, Freud observed that society has historically forced women to repress their desires more than men. For centuries, women were told to be modest, obedient, self-sacrificing. They were told that desire itself was shameful, that sexuality belonged only to men, and that their role was to be passive. This repression created a paradox. Women had to deny their impulses consciously, but their unconscious became charged with even greater force. Freud believed that this repression did not kill desire, it intensified it. The unconscious turned repressed impulses into fantasies, symbols, and obsessions. A woman might consciously deny her attraction, but unconsciously it grows stronger because the forbidden is always more alluring. This is why, Freud argued, female desire often emerges in sudden, shocking ways. It might erupt in a dangerous affair, in obsessive longing, in a fixation that defies reason. Because repression makes desire unstable, it hides under the surface until it breaks free. Men constantly overlook this truth. They assume that if a woman seems calm, proper, or uninterested, then desire isn't there. But Freud would say, desire is often strongest where repression is strongest. The unconscious doesn't play by polite rules. It creates longing precisely where society says it shouldn't exist. This also explains why many men fail to ignite female attraction. They try to appeal to women by offering what society approves of: safety, politeness, predictability. But the unconscious doesn't hunger for what is allowed. It hungers for what is forbidden. And so the men who embody the forbidden, the dangerous, the untamed, often awaken desire more than the men who follow the rules. Part 5. The wound that creates desire. Perhaps Freud's most infamous and controversial idea about women was what he called penis envy. Now, this term is often mocked, misunderstood, and dismissed. But if we strip away the outdated language, what Freud was really pointing to was something deeper. The idea that desire itself arises from a sense of lack. Freud believed that all human desire is born from absence, from the sense that something is missing within us. For men, he described this through the Oedipus complex. But for women, he argued, the unconscious was shaped by an awareness of something missing, something society told them they did not have. In his time, this was represented symbolically as the phallus, the sign of power, authority, and completion. Whether or not you agree with Freud's literal interpretation, the psychological insight is still powerful. Female desire, like all desire, is driven by a wound, by a sense of incompleteness that can never be fully healed. Women desire not simply to have, but to fill the gap, to bridge the absence, to chase what feels just out of reach. This explains why female desire often appears restless. It shifts, it contradicts, it resists final satisfaction, because once desire is satisfied, it disappears. And the unconscious cannot tolerate that. It must keep desire alive by attaching it to new objects, new fantasies, new symbols. Men overlook this when they think love or sex will finally solve a woman's longing. They believe, if I give her everything, she will finally be content. But Freud revealed a darker truth: contentment kills desire. The unconscious sustains longing by keeping the wound open, which means that a woman may continue to desire precisely because something is missing, and she may lose desire when a man tries to give her everything too neatly. Part 6. Desire beyond logic. Why women want what they shouldn't. Freud pushed us to see a truth that most men still deny. Female desire doesn't obey logic. In fact, it often thrives in the exact opposite of logic. This is perhaps his most controversial claim, because it forces us to face the uncomfortable reality that women don't always desire what is good for them. Men often ask, why does she choose him when I've done everything right? They are baffled when women leave stable, loving partners for men who bring chaos, uncertainty, or even danger. From a rational perspective, it seems like madness. But Freud would say, this is the unconscious at work. Desire is not a calculation of benefits. It is an eruption of instinct, fantasy, and repressed longing. Here's what Freud noticed. When a woman desires something forbidden, her unconscious desire intensifies. When she is told she shouldn't want it, the unconscious transforms that into a stronger attraction. The taboo becomes magnetic. And this is why some women are irresistibly drawn to men who embody danger, mystery, or rebellion, because they symbolize what society told her to repress. This doesn't mean that every woman seeks chaos, but Freud argued that desire always carries a transgressive element. It pushes against the limits of what is permitted. This is why desire feels so intoxicating. It takes us out of order, out of safety, and into the dangerous territory of the unknown. Men overlook this because they cling to the fantasy of logic. They think, if I provide enough love, care, and stability, she will never leave. But Freud's insight was brutal. Stability is not the fuel of desire. In fact, too much stability kills it. Desire needs tension. It needs danger. It needs the whisper of the forbidden. This is why Freud described desire as inherently ambivalent. It is always caught between what is wanted and what must not be wanted. And in women, This ambivalence is especially powerful because society has always told them to hide, repress, and deny. The more society pushes women to be proper, the more the unconscious turns toward the improper. Part 7. The Eternal Mystery. Freud couldn't solve. Freud's most haunting admission was that after decades of studying the unconscious, he still could not answer the question, what does a woman want? On the surface, this sounds like failure, but in truth it was his final revelation. The mystery of female desire is not a puzzle with a final answer. It is the very essence of desire itself. To Freud, the unconscious doesn't want resolution. It wants movement. It wants longing. It wants the chase. And female desire, more than anything else, embodies this restless energy. It is always reaching, always shifting, always seeking something beyond what it already has. This is why Freud called women the dark continent of psychology. Not because they were unknowable, but because their desire represented unexplored territory, the wilderness of the unconscious itself. Men want to tame it, to map it, to reduce it to a formula. But Freud insisted desire resists being tamed. The moment you think you've solved it, it slips away and reappears in another form. Here lies the painful beauty of Freud's insight. Women are not mysterious because they are trying to be. They are mysterious because desire itself is structured as a mystery. It is meant to be engaged with, not conquered. Men who demand certainty end up frustrated. Men who embrace the enigma, who understand that desire is fluid, symbolic and paradoxical, they find themselves in tune with the unconscious forces that drive attraction. What men overlook, then, is not just Freud's controversial claim about female desire, but his deeper lesson, that desire is always more than what it seems. It cannot be explained away with logic, checklist qualities, or neat answers. It is a storm in the unconscious, a current pulling beneath the surface, a fire that burns strongest where it is not supposed to burn. Freud's inability to solve female desire was not weakness, it was wisdom. It was his way of showing us that the mystery is not the problem, the mystery is the desire. And once you understand that, you stop trying to reduce women to formulas, and you start seeing them as the living embodiment of the unconscious itself. The lesson men refuse to learn. So what do we take away from Freud's most controversial insight into female desire? Not that women are irrational, not that they are manipulative, not that they are impossible to understand. What Freud showed us is something far more profound, that desire is not built on reason, but on the unconscious. And this is the lesson men constantly overlook. They think they can buy desire with gifts, secure it with logic, or demand it through loyalty. But the unconscious doesn't obey those rules. Female desire is shaped by repression, by contradiction, by symbols, by lack, and by mystery. It is not about what women say they want. It is about what their unconscious longs for, even if they cannot name it. Freud's final gift to us, then, is not an answer, but a challenge. A challenge to stop reducing desire to formulas, a challenge to accept the enigma, a challenge to recognize that what makes desire powerful is precisely what makes it mysterious. If you want to truly understand women, you cannot look only at their words. You must look at their actions, their symbols, their contradictions. You must see how the unconscious speaks through them. And most importantly, you must let go of the fantasy of certainty. Because Freud's most controversial truth still holds today. Female desire is not meant to be solved. It is meant to be felt, engaged, and respected as the mystery that it is. And once you stop overlooking this, once you finally embrace it, you will see women and desire itself in a way that most men never will.